is exceptional. Hello, welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. So I figured I would take the opportunity while I was doing quite a few kind of seemingly random garden tasks to bring you along with me to show you kind of like a behind the scenes of my garden tours. So many people who are out there gardening likely know that you don't just plant a seed and water it and wait and a garden grows itself. It does take a lot of work. And most of the time I am actually in my garden multiple times a day doing random little things, so it doesn't often stack up. We just had some company here for a few days and they just left, and being the height of the growing season and not doing very much, quite a lot needs tending to after a couple days, so we're gonna tackle it. Right now I'm looking for the staplers that are in my little tomato tie tool. I have misplaced them and the volunteer birdhouse gourd is sort of getting unruly. I probably shouldn't be allowing it to do especially this. Any little birdhouse gourd growing on here is gonna be too heavy for things like my vent. My vent is really only held in by the plastic, and the plastic is a few years old. Come here. One of the funny things about birdhouse gourd is when you mess with the leaves at all, it almost smells like a campfire. There's like a distinctly smoky, I don't know how to describe it, but it's got a scent that reminds me of campfire. It's really interesting. So I guess I'll just lay that down. I gotta find these staples. Found them, which is a relief. Looks like I've got plenty of tape. I brought out an extra just in case. So we're actually going to bring the tomato tie tool out onto the lane to help tie up or help train some of our chicken and dumplings cowpeas. So a lot of vining things will have tendrils on them. These little wispies on the vine will actually grab a hold of the trellis and help guide the vine up. And really things like this cucumber and a lot of melons will not need very much training at all. You just sort of usher them towards a trellis and they automatically will just climb up it. Now things like these beans here, they don't necessarily have a tendril, but once they get close to a trellis they will wrap around. So what we have are a lot of these longer bits here, and these are what's going to be growing up the trellis, and you can just kind of support them or lean them up against the trellis to sort of guide them. And I've done that with these ones that you see here. What I like to do is kind of bend and twist like that and just sort of help encourage it upward. One problem that I am having with this method is we have been getting a lot of rain lately, and when plants are kind of saturated with moisture they can be quite, not brittle, but extra succulent, and they can tend to break. And so some of these, as I'm trying to weave them into the trellis, are snapping off, and obviously that's not going to help them climb the trellis. So with some of these, instead of trying to weave them into the trellis, I'll just secure them with this tie. And that's going to help support them while they are getting connected to the trellis. So right now everything does look kind of forced up onto the trellis, and that's because it was. But it will only take probably a day of sunshine to help these leaves reorient themselves, and then these beans they'll probably not need more training than this. They just need to be guided, and then they'll be growing by themselves. So I've had a bit of a problem in the greenhouse since we put in some mulch that was brought in that wasn't bagged. Traditionally, I have just put bagged hardwood bark mulch on my garden beds, and I haven't had much of a problem with bugs at all in my gardens. But I think we brought in some aphids and other pests with that mulch, and I've been having kind of a time with things like aphids and whiteflies in my greenhouse. But there is a method for taking care of them that is very simple, and I have shown it on the channel before, but I'd like to show it again. That is diluting milk by half, 50% water, 50% milk, and spraying it on the plants. What it does is when that dries, the sugars in the milk create such a sticky environment that those pests can no longer move. It may contribute to kind of suffocate them out, because a lot of insects will breathe through little holes in their exoskeleton. So I think there is a storm rolling in, but one of the wonderful things about a greenhouse is that you can often work in the rain as long as there isn't, real bad inclement weather. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my milk and get my sprayer and treat these plants again. Let me show you what we're working with. I actually recently just sprayed in here with spinosad again, because we are seeing what I believe are armyworms, especially on this particular tomato. You can see right here these little brown bits. This is evidence of caterpillar poo. I have not noticed any tomato hornworms yet this year, and the spinosad really might help keep them away. But what the spinosad does not help with is sucking insects. They really help with chewing insects. The bugs really have to consume that spinosad in order to be affected, and it's really just going to be on the surface of the leaf. So something like an aphid or a whitefly that just uses its proboscis to like suck away sap really isn't going to be consuming much of that pesticide at all. And so here's what we're dealing with. We've got lots of whiteflies right here. Those are those little white specks, and then the little brown specks amongst them, those are aphids. This here is actually a determinate tomato. This is aroma, but what I often see with my determinants is I will see them doing more than one flowering a year, so there's still a lot of life left in this plant, and so I want to take care of those bugs. And I'm actually seeing something that I have never seen before, and I think I actually talked about it in a recent garden tour. I said, oh, aphids don't really bother cucurbit plants. I guess until this year when we have a real bad aphid problem. So I came through and I noticed some of these cucumbers that I have were starting to look a little bit shrivelly, and I saw all these little white bits on it. You see those? Those are whiteflies, and this plant is curling up due to stress. I looked underneath, tons of aphids. So we've got to deal with that in here too. You can see the ants. This can be a sign that you've got aphids as well. What these ants are going to do is literally farm the aphids. Look at all the aphids on the bottom of that leaf. Truthfully, this leaf can get sacrificed. That is exceptional. See if we can come out in a better light and get a look at that. Things like this leaf is probably never going to recover, so I'm just going to take it off, give it to the chickens. We really need our milk mixture. I mean, you probably won't like it. It's for the chickens, okay? Or feral. How do those aphids taste, baby? I mean, I guess that works, right? Give it a good shake, and we're on our way. When performing tasks like this, I really want to make sure that I'm focusing the spray where the insects are at. A lot of times aphids don't do a whole lot of moving, and I want to make sure that I'm targeting them at the underside of the leaf. So what I'm doing is just turning the sprayer upside down and getting underneath all those leaves. That's one of the benefits too of growing on a trellis like this. Just spraying upwards is getting underneath all those leaves. It's also giving me a little bit of a milk bath, but that's okay. The milk is good for the skin. Ultimately, this is going to be a war that I'm not going to win. Aphids can reproduce asexually, which means that they don't need a mate in order to make more. So all I have to do is miss one aphid and there will be more. The last time I treated for aphids in the greenhouse, my plants got a really great boost because we did get a big knockout of the aphids that were in here before. That was probably about 3 weeks to a month ago, and I'm just now having to retreat. So the milk trick, in my opinion, does work. You saw the aphids that were on that leaf. They will be dead by morning, and we'll come back and take a look. I do know that many people will use this diluted milk mixture to treat things like powdery mildew on their plants as well. And I did spray a little bit of milk in here, so you're seeing that. But these cucumbers that my kids are growing in their garden are dealing with a little bit of powdery mildew. So we can test that out as well. It's something that I've never tried before for powdery mildew. Now, unlike in the greenhouse, that we do have some rain coming maybe tonight, probably tomorrow. And so these plants, the treatment isn't gonna last very long, but I imagine it'll still make some kind of a dent. This is what we're dealing with here. You can see these spots that look like, well, just looks like what it is. It looks like mildew. See that there? Good morning. It is the next day. We actually got quite a lot of rain last night, and usually with rain comes wind, and unfortunately a lot of the perennial garden looks pretty windswept, and it has essentially all year. I guess that's the price we pay to get the garden watered from above, and so it's fine. It's really not too much of a big deal. Part of this zinnia cracked off at the base, but there's still a lot left. One of the things I'd like to tackle this morning has to do with these two squash plants here. One of these is a white scallop squash and the other one is a yellow scallop squash. And I'd really love to experiment with growing bush style summer squash vertically up some kind of pole. So this T-post is overkill. We could use like a sturdy piece of rebar or a thicker piece of wood, like maybe some 1x2 or something. But I have this, so I'm gonna use it. Really, these guys are still a little bit small to try to train up the trellis, but these T-posts will be here when it comes time. That one's getting close. I've never grown squash in this way, but I have seen people have some really great success with it. It essentially allows for more airflow, and it's an easier way to grow a bushing style variety that may take up a lot of space and have it take up less space. So I'm excited to try it out. So far I have not seen any squash bugs or anything on these, but I imagine it's only a matter of time. Easy to train something up a trellis like I showed you yesterday. It's a little less simple to train something to grow down a trellis. The plants obviously want to grow up towards the sun, and so at least twice a day, because this loofah is growing so fast, I have to come out and sort of encourage the loofah to grow downwards. I'd like it to be able to cover this whole archway. One way that you can do this more easily is to plant one loofah on either side of the trellis, but if you want to just utilize one side, you can do it this way. You just have to be a little bit more hands-on with it. The grapevines are so close to getting to the top of this trellis, and when they get to that point, I can stop removing the suckers. Removing the little suckers too, it's just temporary. They will put energy into sideward growth, even from the same points where I removed it, pretty much continually. I'm just trying to get the plants to concentrate their growth upwards, and it's working. These guys were dealing with a little bit of aphid pressure a while ago, and it looks like we may have a tiny bit of that coming back. It's like the aphids really like the new growth. So for now, I'm gonna keep my eye on that. The whole plant isn't really affected. The other grapes that I have reached the top of their trellis, and for a little bit I was trying to train them sideways because they wanted to just all grow upwards, but it looks like these lateral branches really did get the memo, and they're reaching out beautifully. So there's really not much training to do out here. We do need to check in the greenhouse though and see how our milk mixture did with the aphid situation in there. So it looks pretty bad still, but what you might not be able to tell is that these aphids are not moving. They have essentially just died in place right where they were. The aphids that are here in the greenhouse are, right now they're light greenish yellow, and a lot of them as they're dying are turning like a brown color. Aphids come in lots of colors, but in looking at these are not moving at all. So our milk did its job. I'm actually really grateful that the growing season isn't all year round, because I could see myself getting pretty burnt out trying to deal with stuff like this all the time. And like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, it's really not something that we deal with on most years. This year is particularly bad for aphids in our garden, and it's just kind of one of those things. But I do look forward to the rest that the end of fall and over winter brings. But for now, I think we've got the upper hand. So I mentioned in one of our more recent garden tours that this tomato, which was labeled black crim, doesn't really look black to me. It tastes really nice and smoky like a dark tomato does. This is labeled Brandywine Black. It doesn't necessarily look like a Brandywine to me, but it does have a nice coloration. A couple people were suggesting because of the shade cloth in the greenhouse, maybe the black crim wasn't able to show its true colors. It may be the case for this particular variety, but this guy seems to be showing a dark color pretty nicely, so I don't know. Most of the peppers in the greenhouse are doing really well being trained vertically up a line, and it's actually pretty low maintenance. It sounds like it would be kind of high maintenance, but really all I have to do is a couple times a week come twist the plants around the string here, and then I need to be removing certain suckers to help increase or to help encourage the plants in an upward growth pattern, a lot like I did with the grapes. The peppers, as they grow, like to split into this Y pattern. Sometimes there'll be 3 branches instead of 2, but I will just pick one to be my main leader and pinch off the others. And this just encourages the plant to grow up and up. And you can see that I've left that little tiny bud there. That's going to be a pepper. See this pepper here? That's what we get. It's like a garland of peppers. Just gonna pinch and twist. This particular pepper is starting to put out more suckers where I had pinched some off. Because we've got quite a bit of height on these peppers, I am gonna let it do that. Because really, once we reach the top of the greenhouse, I could do what's called a lower and lean with these tomahawk hooks up here and keep encouraging them upward, but I'm really not upset if they want to bush out a little. This is an experiment after all. We're not trying to have a production grow inside some kind of production greenhouse. This is all an experiment. Some varieties like this King of the North really, oh no, this is the pimento. They're really not growing upwards very much, so I have really stopped trimming those, just allowing those to bush out. But see this one, it's doing really well growing vertically. I have a few basil plants kind of hiding amongst the other plants in here, and I have harvested off of these and made some pesto in the past. What I'm aiming to do right at this moment is pinch off the buds to discourage flowering. Sometime very soon I will come through here and harvest these, cutting them back and allowing them to regrow, but I don't have time for that today, so I just need to take off the buds. Not half bad, I'd say. An overflowing basket is always a good thing, unless it's laundry. I think all I have left to do to catch up on things that I got a little bit behind with while my friends were here is to sweep out the center of the greenhouse from the trimming that I did yesterday of some of the diseased leaves. We've definitely hit the point in the year where the days are hot, the weeds are vigorous, and so chaos gardening is kind of the theme from here on out. We're gonna do what we can, but this is going to be a losing war. We may win small battles, we will lose the war, but that's okay. Winter brings rest, and for now, these lovely harvest baskets make it all worth it. Whoa, did you guys see that? Oh, my basket tried to do me dirty. Truthfully though, even if we didn't have the reward of the harvest, we would still be harvesting things like experience, and it's really hard to quantify value on that. So even if you're having a hard garden year, you're cultivating some knowledge, you're cultivating things that you'll be able to use in your next gardening year, and it all has really an immeasurable value.